Hey everyone, good to be back with you. Kevin, here's our third question. How can couples learn to navigate conflict in a healthy and productive way rather than letting it damage their relationship?
So conflict is a natural aspect. We're fallen people that live in a fallen world. I have conflict with myself every day. So clearly my wife is going to have conflict with me at times. And so I think to expect it, to understand it, to know it's just a natural aspect of what takes place in life. Healthy couples have a good amount of conflict. Now, clearly we never want our relationships to totally be defined by conflict. But a warning sign for me would be if a couple never experiences conflict, I would actually say they are in just as much danger as a couple who maybe on a regular basis is being destroyed by conflict. So we need to expect it, to understand that it is going to take place. But here's something I think the average couple can do that maybe we don't realize. Generally speaking, whenever we experience conflict, our heart raises, our body begins to change. In that moment, we are not responding to the person in front of us, but we're responding to the past behind us. And something I think a lot of couples don't understand is that many of the arguments that you are having with your spouse is actually fight or flight that's coming from unresolved past experiences that maybe you haven't processed in a proper way. And so, if as a child, maybe you weren't loved well, if in previous relationships you experienced a great deal of tension, if just in the generalities of life, there are moments in which other people have not responded and attuned to your needs the way you think that they should have, if we're not very careful, our brains can begin to wire that together. And suddenly, the spouse that is right in front of us, we can associate them with something that we have actually experienced from our past. And so I think many couples would benefit just from digging up some of their past experiences and understanding in times of distress, what does my body do and how do I respond? And what are my core fears? And is it fair to associate this fear with the person that is standing in front of me? Now, sometimes it is, because sometimes what we're responding to is past trauma that we've had with our spouse, and then that's understandable. But many times, I come from a background where my great fear is that of abandonment. And so if I get in conflict, I can be afraid that if I say the wrong thing or say it the wrong way, my wife is going to leave me. She's going to abandon me. Well, she would never do that. There's no reason to assume that's going to take place. And yet I'm literally living the conflict in that moment out of that fear. But now that I recognize it, now that I'm aware of it, what that empowers me to do is to see what's going on inside my body, but then to remind myself, no, that's my past. That is not Jenny. And so while I'm tempted to run or to shut down emotionally, I can then prompt myself to lean into the conflict, to lean into the conversation, and to handle it in a much more positive way. So one of the things I would do for a couple is I would look at, how do you handle conflict? And then is there a way to maybe deconstruct a fight, or in the middle of a fight to step out of it and to say, okay, what's going on here in this moment? Sue Johnson, the great marriage expert who wrote the book Hold Me Tight, she says there's only basically 3 types of fights that couples have. And so you have the idea of find the bad guy, where we're trying to prove that our spouse is actually the bad guy who did us wrong, which is never a productive kind of concept. You have what she calls the polka protest, which is the idea of one is pursuing and the other is withdrawing. And the more one pursues, the more the other withdraws. So you have to recognize that. And then you basically have an emotional shutdown where there is no longer any conflict whatsoever. So I think if couples can begin to recognize those 3 types of conflicts, and then to learn processes to avoid the negative ramifications of what those looks like, we can actually turn conflict into a positive thing. Here's what amazes me about healthy couples versus unhealthy couples. The fight that destroys the unhealthy couple makes the healthy couple stronger. And what's the difference? The difference is not the context of what's going on. The difference is a healthy couple learns to get on the same side as one another and to fight the issue together, whereas the unhealthy couple is actually fighting one another. If you can find a way to link arms, deal with the conflict as a third party, and we together are going to go after that, then whatever you might face in the moment, you can actually draw closer to each other, and every conflict can actually make your marriage better.
Yeah. I love that because so practical. As we've all been in those conflicts where you feel your pulse pumping and you feel yourself getting agitated. And I just know even in our own marriage, we has used that line, you are not the enemy. In the middle of that moment, it's so easy to see the other person as your adversary rather than your partner. And when that happens, then the chance of having a successful conflict just seems totally mitigated.